Welcome to Murder in a Tech-Stratified Society, a gripping sci-fi thriller where the rich rewrite reality and the poor are programmed to obey. One scavenger, one dead body, one secret that could tear the system apart. If you enjoy dark futuristic mysteries, hit like, subscribe, and share to support the series. Let's dive into the shadows of Nova. Chapter 1: The Nameless Death. The city of Nova pulsed like a dying star, its skyline a jagged mosaic of neon and steel. Towering spires of the upper echelon pierced the smog, their holographic facades broadcasting promises of immortality to those who could afford it. Below, in the shadowed alleys of the lower grid, the air was thick with the stench of burnt circuits and despair. Here, the forgotten scavenged among the wreckage of discarded tech, their lives tethered to the whims of the chips embedded in their skulls. Kale crouched in the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, his fingers dancing over the cracked screen of a salvaged datapad. The device whirred, protesting as he bypassed its security protocols. A scavenger by trade, Kale made a living repairing the upper echelon's cast-offs, drones, implants, anything with a circuit he could coax back to life. It wasn't much, but it kept him off the streets and out of the labor camps. "Almost there," he muttered, his breath fogging in the chill. The datapad beeped, granting access to a cache of encrypted files. Probably schematics for some obsolete gadget. Worth a few credits if he was lucky. A low hum interrupted his focus. Kale's eyes flicked upward, scanning the alley. A surveillance drone hovered at the edge of his vision, its red lens glinting like a predator's eye. He froze, heart pounding. The chip in his temple throbbed faintly, a reminder that every move, every thought, could be monitored. But the drone passed, its rotors fading into the city's ceaseless drone. He exhaled, returning to the datapad. That's when he saw it. Beyond the pile of shattered holoscreens and tangled wires, something lay half-buried in the refuse. At first, Kale thought it was just another broken android, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. But the shape was too human, too still. He stood, his boots crunching on glass, and approached cautiously. It was a body. The corpse was male or had been. The face was unrecognizable, scorched by what looked like a high-voltage discharge. The clothes, ragged like Kale's own, marked him as a lower gridder. But what caught Kale's eye was the faint glow emanating from the man's temple, where a neural chip should have been dark. The implant was still active, its circuits pulsing erratically. "Who the hell are you?" Kale whispered, kneeling beside the body. Death wasn't uncommon in the lower grid. Starvation, disease, or a stray enforcer's bullet claimed lives daily. But this felt different. Wrong. He glanced around, ensuring the alley was empty, then reached for the glowing implant. His fingers brushed the scorched skin, and a jolt shot through him. Not pain, but a surge of data. His vision flickered, overlaid with fragments of code, coordinates, and a single word: Zenith. Kale yanked his hand back, heart racing. Zenith was the corporation that ran Nova, the architects of the neural chips that controlled the lower grid's population. Their tech was untouchable, their authority absolute. Why would a dead man's chip carry their name? He hesitated, then pulled a microprobe from his toolkit. If the chip was still active, it might hold answers. Or trouble. Probably both. He inserted the probe into the implant's port, connecting it to his datapad. The screen lit up, streaming lines of encrypted data. Most of it was gibberish, but one fragment stood out: a partial access code to a restricted surveillance network. The kind only the upper echelon used. Kale's mouth went dry. This wasn't just a dead body. This was a breach. A crack in the system that kept the lower grid in chains. He should walk away, sell the datapad, and forget he ever saw this. But curiosity gnawed at him, sharper than fear. He downloaded the data, then froze as footsteps echoed at the alley's mouth. Heavy, deliberate, not a scavenger shuffle. Cale pocketed the datapad and slipped behind a pile of debris, his pulse hammering. Two figures emerged, clad in sleek, black exosuits that shimmered with adaptive camouflage. Enforcers. Their visors scanned the alley, infrared beams cutting through the dark. One knelt beside the body, running a scanner over the implant. Neural signatures degraded, the enforcer said, voice distorted by a modulator. But there's a trace. Someone accessed it. Find them, the other replied. No loose ends. Cale's blood ran cold. They weren't here to investigate. They were here to clean up. He held his breath as the enforcers swept the alley, their scanners humming. The chip in his temple pulsed again, sharper this time, like a warning. He clenched his jaw, willing it to stay silent. If it pinged the network now, he was dead. The enforcers moved past his hiding spot, their boots inches from his face. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they retreated, vanishing into the night. Cale waited, counting seconds, until the alley was silent again. He emerged, his mind racing. The dead man's chip held something dangerous, something Zenith wanted buried. And now Cale had it. He glanced at the body one last time, its glowing implant fading like a dying ember. Whoever this man was, his death wasn't random. It was a message, or a mistake. Cale pulled his hood low and slipped into the maze of the lower grid, the datapad heavy in his pocket. The city loomed above, its spires watching. He didn't know what he'd stumbled into, but one thing was clear. The truth was worth more than his life. And he intended to find it. The streets of the lower grid were a labyrinth of flickering signs and crowded tenements. Cale moved quickly, sticking to the shadows. The datapad burned a metaphorical hole in his jacket, its secrets pulling him deeper into a world he'd spent years avoiding. He needed a safe place to decrypt the data, somewhere the enforcers couldn't track. His workshop was a cramped basement beneath a derelict factory, its walls lined with scavenged tech and jury-rigged servers. The air hummed with the soft whine of cooling fans. Cale locked the door behind him, double-checking the signal jammer he'd built to block Zenith's surveillance. It wasn't foolproof, but it was better than nothing. He plugged the datapad into his main rig, a patchwork of stolen processors and salvage drives. The screen flickered to life, displaying the encrypted files from the dead man's chip. Cale's fingers flew over the keyboard, running decryption algorithms he'd cobbled together from years of hacking scraps. The code was complex, layered with traps that could fry his system or his brain if he made a mistake. "Come on," he muttered, sipping from a can of synthetic caffeine. The screen pulsed, then cleared, revealing a partial schematic. It was a map of Nova's surveillance grid, the invisible web that tracked every citizen's movements. But this wasn't the public network. This was the upper echelon's private system, the one that monitored their own. Cale leaned back, his mind spinning. Why would a lower gridder have access to this? And why was he dead? A new file popped up, unprompted. A video fragment, corrupted but intact enough to play. Cale hesitated, then clicked. The screen filled with static, then resolved into a grainy image of a man. The dead man, alive. He was in a sterile lab, surrounded by hollow displays and blinking consoles. His voice was low, urgent. "They're lying," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "The chips aren't just for control. They're rewriting us, erasing us. If you're seeing this, it's too late for me. But you can stop them. Find the Eclipse protocol. Find." The video cut off, replaced by a Zenith logo and a warning, "Unauthorized access detected. Terminating connection." Cale's rig sparked, and the screen went black. He cursed, yanking the datapad free before the system could overload. His heart pounded as he stared at the dead screen. Eclipse protocol. The words echoed in his mind, heavy with implication. He didn't know what Eclipse was, but he knew Zenith. They didn't make mistakes. If they killed that man, it was to protect something big. Something worth burning the lower grid to ash. A sharp knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. Kale froze, his hand drifting to the stun rod he kept under the desk. The knock came again, softer this time, almost hesitant. "Kale?" A voice called, low and unfamiliar. "We need to talk." He didn't answer, his mind racing. Enforcers didn't knock. But no one in the lower grid knew his name. Not unless they'd been watching. The chip in his temple pulsed again, sharper, like a needle in his skull. Kale gripped the stun rod and moved to the door, ready for whatever, or whoever, was waiting. Chapter 2 Whispers from the chip. Kale's grip tightened on the stun rod as the knock echoed again, softer but insistent. The voice on the other side of the door was unfamiliar, but it carried an edge of urgency that set his nerves on fire. In the lower grid, strangers didn't come calling unless they wanted something, or were sent to take it. "Who's there?" he growled, keeping his voice low. The chip in his temple throbbed, a faint pulse that hadn't stopped since he'd touched the dead man's implant. He ignored it, focusing on the door. "Mira," the voice replied. "I'm not here to hurt you. But we're both in trouble if you don't open this door now." Kale hesitated. The name meant nothing to him, and trust was a currency he couldn't afford. But the enforcers from the alley weren't the knocking type. They'd have kicked the door in by now. He glanced at the datapad on his desk, its screen still dark from the forced shutdown. Whatever was on it had already marked him. Hiding wouldn't change that. He flipped the stun rod to low charge and cracked the door, keeping the weapon ready. A woman stood in the dim hallway, her face half hidden by a hood. She was tall, wiry, with sharp eyes that scanned him like a predator sizing up prey. Her clothes were lower grid standard, patched jacket, worn boots, but her posture was too confident, too deliberate. "Talk fast," Kale said, not lowering the rod. Mira raised her hands, palms open. "You found a body in the junkyard. You took something from it. Now Zenith's hunting you. That fast enough?" Kale's stomach dropped. Nobody could know that unless they'd been watching. Or tracking. He stepped back, raising the stun rod. "How do you know what I did?" "Because I was there," Mira said, her voice steady. "I saw you pull the chip's data. And I know what it means. Let me in, Kale. We don't have time for this." The chip pulsed again, sharper, like a warning. Kale gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to rip the damn thing out. 5 seconds. "Convince me." Myra's eyes narrowed. "The man you found was a Zenith engineer. He was trying to expose them. Now he's dead, and you're holding the only proof. If you don't trust me, you're dead too. Enforcers are already sweeping the grid." Kale's mind raced. She knew too much. Names, details, the chip. Either she was telling the truth, or she was bait. But the mention of Zenith and the engineer matched the video fragment he'd seen. He stepped aside, keeping the stun rod raised. "Move." Slowly. Mira slipped inside, her movements fluid, like someone used to dodging trouble. Kale locked the door and activated the signal jammer, its hum filling the cramped workshop. He gestured to a chair, but Mira stayed standing, her eyes flicking over his rig, the scattered tools, the datapad. "Nice setup," she said, almost to herself. "For a scavenger." "Cut the small talk," Kale snapped. "Who are you and why are you here?" Mira pulled back her hood, revealing short, dark hair and a faint scar tracing her jaw. "I'm a journalist. Or was, before Zenith blacklisted me. Now I dig up their secrets and make them bleed for it. The man you found, he was one of my sources." Kale's grip on the stun rod eased slightly, but he didn't trust her yet. "A journalist. In the lower grid. And you just happened to be at the junkyard?" I was meeting him, Mira said, her voice tightening. He was late. Then I saw you poking around his body. Didn't expect you to pull the chip's data, though. That was bold. Stupid, more like, Kale muttered. He set the stun rod down but kept it within reach. What's on it? Why is Zenith so desperate to bury it? Mira hesitated, glancing at the datapad. You didn't decrypt it all, did you? Enough to know it's trouble. Surveillance grid access, a video of your dead friend ranting about something called Eclipse. Then my rig nearly fried. Myra's face paled, just for a second. Eclipse? Shit. He wasn't supposed to have that. Care to share? Kale said, crossing his arms. Or do I toss you out and take my chances? Mira paced, her boots scuffing the concrete floor. The chip's data is a piece of something bigger. Zenith's neural implants. They're not just for tracking. They can manipulate behavior. Thus, even memories. Your friend in the junkyard found proof they're testing it on the lower grid. Eclipse is the endgame. Kale's blood ran cold. The chip in his temple pulsed again, and this time he swore he heard a faint whisper, words he couldn't make out. He shook his head, trying to focus. You're saying they're turning us into puppets? Worse, Mira said. They're turning you into weapons. Or erasing you entirely. The engineer, his name was Torin, he was trying to sabotage their system. That's why they killed him. Kale stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He'd always known the chips were invasive, but this was something else. Something monstrous. And you think I'm just gonna hand over the data to some stranger who claims she's a hero? Myra's lips twitched, almost a smile. I'm no hero, but I'm your best shot at staying alive. Zenith's already flagged your chip. You're a loose end now. As if on cue, the chip pulsed again, sharp enough to make Kale wince. The lights in the workshop flickered, and his rig beeped, spitting out an alert. He lunged for the screen, scanning the code. Network ping. Someone's trying to trace me. Mira was at his side in an instant, peering at the screen. They're faster than I thought. We need to move. Move where? Kale snapped, yanking the datapad free and stuffing it into his jacket. This is my place. I'm not running. You don't have a choice, Mira said, grabbing his arm. They're not sending enforcers this time. They're sending specters. Kale froze. Specters were a rumor, a ghost story in the lower grid. Assassins controlled by AI, their neural chips overriding free will. Invisible, unstoppable. If Zenith was deploying them, Mira wasn't exaggerating. Fine, he said, grabbing his toolkit and the stun rod. But you're explaining everything. No more half-truths. Deal, Mira said, already moving to the door. If we survive. The streets outside were a chaos of noise and shadow. Hollow ads flickered overhead, preaching the virtues of Zenith's latest implants. Kale kept his hood low, following Mira through the crowd. The chip in his temple buzzed faintly, like a swarm of insects in his skull. He tried to ignore it, focusing on Myra's back as she wove through the maze of alleys. Where are we going? He asked, his voice barely audible over the din. Safe house, Mira said without turning. Old resistance hideout. Zenith doesn't know it exists. Resistance? Kale raised an eyebrow. What? You're some kind of rebel now? Something like that, Mira said, her tone clipped. Keep up. They ducked into a narrow street, the air heavy with the reek of burnt plastic. Kale's eyes darted to the rooftops, half expecting a specter to materialize. The chip pulsed again, and this time, the whisper was clearer, a single word, run. He stumbled, clutching his head. Mira spun, grabbing his shoulder. What's wrong? The chip, Kale gasped. It's talking. Myra's eyes widened. They're activating it. Come on, we're close. She pulled him forward, but the street ahead shimmered, like heat rising from asphalt. A figure appeared, its form flickering like a corrupted hologram. It was humanoid, clad in a sleek, black exosuit, its face a blank visor. "A specter! Down!" Mira shouted, shoving Kale behind a dumpster. The specter moved, its speed unnatural, closing the distance in seconds. Mira pulled a compact pulse gun from her jacket and fired. The blast hit the specter's shoulder, sparking, but it didn't slow. Kale scrambled to his feet, the stun rod humming in his hand. He swung, aiming for the specter's legs, but it sidestepped effortlessly, its visor locking onto him. The chip screamed in his head, a flood of static and commands. "Submit. Obey." Kale gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to drop the rod. Mira fired again, this time hitting the specter's chest. It staggered, its form glitching, then lunged at her. Kale acted on instinct, diving forward and jamming the stun rod into the specter's back. The weapon discharged, sending a surge of electricity through the assassin's suit. The specter convulsed, then collapsed, its visor dark. Mira grabbed Kale's arm, pulling him up. "Nice move. Now run." They sprinted through the alleys, the safe house just ahead, a rusted door in a crumbling wall. Mira punched in a code, and the door hissed open. They stumbled inside, the door slamming shut behind them. The safe house was a concrete bunker, its walls lined with old terminals and crates of scavenged tech. Kale leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "What the hell was that thing?" "Spectre," Mira said, checking her pulse gun. "Zenith's perfect killer. No conscience, no hesitation. Just code." Kale touched his temple, the chip's whispers fading but not gone. "And this? What's it doing to me?" Mira met his eyes, her expression grim. "Torin's data, it's not just proof. It's a virus. A way to disrupt Zenith's control. But it's incomplete. That's why they're desperate to stop us." Kale pulled the datapad from his jacket, its weight heavier than ever. "Then we finish what he started." Mira nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "We finish it, or we die trying." Chapter 3: The Upper Echelon. The safe house was a tomb of flickering screens and stale air, its walls closing in as Kale stared at the datapad. The device sat on a crate, its cracked screen dark but heavy with secrets. Torin's virus, Mira had called it, a digital dagger aimed at Zenith's heart. But it was incomplete, a puzzle missing half its pieces. And the whispers in Kale's head, faint but persistent, reminded him that time was running out. Mira paced, her pulse gun now tucked into a holster beneath her jacket. "We can't crack the rest of Torin's data here," she said, her voice clipped. "The encryption's tied to Zenith's private network. We need access to their core systems." Kale snorted, leaning back against the concrete wall. "Sure. Let's just stroll into their headquarters and plug in." "No problem." "Not their headquarters," Mira said, stopping to face him. "Their gala. Tomorrow night, at the Apex Spire. The upper echelon's throwing a party to celebrate Zenith's latest chip upgrade. Every exec will be there, including Elias Varn." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Varn? The CEO?" "More than that," Mira said, her tone darkening. "He's the architect of Eclipse. If anyone has the keys to their network, it's him." Kale rubbed his temple, where the chip pulsed faintly. The whispers had quieted since the Spectre attack, but they lingered like a shadow in his mind. "And how do two grid rats get into the most exclusive party in Nova?" Myra's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "We don't go as grid rats. We go as them." The Apex Spire loomed like a blade of glass and light, its holographic facade shifting with images of Zenith's triumphs, neural chips granting perfect memory, drones mapping every corner of Nova, citizens smiling under the corporation's benevolent gaze. Kale felt sick just looking at it. The spire was a monument to everything the lower grid lacked: wealth, power, freedom. He adjusted the stolen suit Mira had procured, its fabric unnervingly smooth against his skin. The upper echelon's attire was as alien as their world, all sleek lines and embedded tech that hummed softly. A forged ID chip, courtesy of Myra's resistance contacts, sat in his pocket, its signal mimicking an elite's credentials. Mira stood beside him, her own disguise flawless. A shimmering dress that caught the light like liquid metal, her scar hidden by subtle hollow makeup. She looked like she belonged. Kale didn't. "Stop fidgeting," Mira hissed as they approached the spire's entrance, a glowing arch flanked by security drones. "Act like you own the place." "Easy for you," Kale muttered, forcing his shoulders to relax. "You've done this before." Myra's eyes flicked to him, a shadow passing over her face. "Don't remind me." The drones scanned their ID chips, their lenses glinting. Kale held his breath, expecting alarms to blare. But the arch chimed softly, and the drones parted. Mira grabbed his arm, pulling him into the spire's atrium before he could overthink it. The interior was a cathedral of excess. Crystal chandeliers floated without support, casting prisms across marble floors. Hollow displays projected scenes of Nova's past and future, curated to erase the lower grid's existence. Elites mingled in clusters, their laughter sharp and artificial, their neural implants glowing faintly at their temples. Ornamental, not controlling. Kale's own chip throbbed, a reminder of the chasm between them. "Stay close," Mira whispered, guiding him through the crowd. "We need a terminal with network access. Varn's office is too secure, but the Gala systems are linked to the core." Kale nodded, his eyes scanning the room. The elites barely noticed them, their attention consumed by self-congratulation. A woman in a gilded gown boasted about her chip's new empathy algorithm, claiming it made her charity work more authentic. A man with silver hair bragged about his drones culling undesirables from the grid's edges. Kale's jaw clenched. These were the people who'd killed Torin. Who'd kill him if they knew. Mira steered him toward a sleek console near the bar, its screen displaying gala schedules and guest profiles. "Keep watch," she said, slipping a microdrive from her sleeve. "This'll take a minute." Kale positioned himself to block the console from view, his heart pounding. The chip whispered again, "Observe, report dot," and he shook his head, trying to silence it. He scanned the crowd, then froze. A man stood across the room, his presence commanding despite his unassuming frame. His suit was black, unadorned, and his eyes were cold, calculating. Elias Varn. Varn moved through the gala like a shark, elites parting to let him pass. He paused to speak with a woman in a Zenith uniform, her insignia marking her as a lead engineer. Kale caught fragments of their conversation over the crowd's hum. "Eclipse is ahead of schedule," the engineer said, her voice low. "The lower grid trials are yielding results." "Good," Varn replied, his tone smooth but edged with steel. "No more leaks. Torin was a mistake we can't repeat." Kale's blood ran cold. "Torin?" They were talking about the dead man. He glanced at Mira, who was still hunched over the console, her microdrive blinking as it siphoned data. "Hurry," he whispered. "Almost there," Mira muttered, her fingers flying over the interface. Varn's gaze swept the room, and for a moment, Kale swore it lingered on him. The chip pulsed sharply, and a wave of dizziness hit. "Identify. Neutralize." The whispers were louder now, urgent. Kale gripped the edge of the bar, fighting the urge to bolt. Mira yanked the microdrive free, pocketing it. "Got it. Partial network access and a fragment of Eclipse's schematics. Let's go." But before they could move, a hush fell over the gala. Varn stepped onto a floating platform at the room's center, a hollow display looming behind him. The crowd turned, their faces rapt. Kale and Mira froze, trapped among the elites. "Ladies and gentlemen," Varn began, his voice carrying an almost hypnotic calm. "Tonight, we celebrate Zenith's vision, a world perfected by technology. Our neural chips have brought order, efficiency, and unity. But we stand on the cusp of something greater." The hollow display shifted, showing a map of Nova, the lower grid reduced to a gray smear. Red dots pulsed across it, thousands of them, each representing a chipped citizen. Kale's stomach churned as he realized what he was seeing. "Eclipse," Varn continued, "is our final step. A system to eliminate chaos, to ensure every mind serves the greater good. No dissent, no weakness. A new humanity sculpted by our hands." The elites applauded, their enthusiasm chilling. Kale glanced at Mira, whose face was pale, her fists clenched. "He's talking about mass control," she whispered. "They're going to erase free will." Kale's chip screamed, "Comply." Served, and he stumbled, catching himself on the bar. An elite nearby glanced at him, frowning, but Mira pulled him upright, her grip firm. "Hold it together," she hissed. "We're leaving." They slipped through the crowd as Varn's speech continued, his words fading into a drone of self-congratulation. But the exit was blocked by security drones, their lenses scanning guests as they left. Mira cursed under her breath. "They're checking IDs. Our forgeries won't hold up to a deep scan." Kale's mind raced. The chip's whispers were relentless now, urging him to turn back, to report Mira. He clenched his fists, fighting the compulsion. "Diversion," he said. "We need chaos." Mira nodded, scanning the room. "Follow my lead." She moved to a nearby hollow display, one projecting Zenith's propaganda. With a subtle flick of her wrist, she inserted a small device. A signal disruptor, Kale realized. The display flickered, then erupted into static, spewing distorted images of the lower grid, starving children, labor camps, bodies in junkyards. The elites gasped, their composure shattering. "Now," Mira said, grabbing Kale's arm. They pushed through the panicked crowd, the drones distracted by the malfunctioning display. Kale's chip pulsed, but he focused on Myra's voice, her urgency grounding him. They reached the exit just as the drones recalibrated, their lenses locking onto them. "Run!" Mira shouted. They sprinted into the spire's lower levels, a maze of service corridors and maintenance shafts. The drones pursued, their rotors a deafening buzz. Kale's lungs burned, but he kept pace with Mira, the microdrive in her pocket their only hope. They ducked into a narrow shaft, its walls lined with humming cables, and Mira slammed a panel shut behind them. The drone's hum faded, but Kale's chip didn't. "Return. Confess." He pressed his hands to his temples, trying to block it out. "It's getting worse," he gasped. "The chip. It's commanding me." Mira knelt beside him, her eyes searching his. "Torin's virus, it's clashing with Zenith's signals. That's why it's fighting you. We need to finish his work, Kale. It's the only way to stop this." Kale nodded, his breath ragged. The microdrive held a piece of Eclipse, proof of Varn's plan to enslave millions. But it wasn't enough. Torin had died to expose Zenith, and Kale was starting to understand why. The upper echelon didn't just control lives. They reshaped them, erased them, all in the name of perfection. "We need to find the resistance," Kale said, forcing himself to stand. "They'll know what to do with this." Myra's expression softened, just for a moment. "You're in deep now, scavenger. No turning back." Kale managed a grim smile. "Wasn't planning to." They moved deeper into the shaft, the spire's opulence replaced by cold steel and shadows. Above, Varn's gala continued, a celebration of a future where free will was a memory. Below, Kale and Mira carried the spark of rebellion, and the weight of a truth that could burn Nova to the ground. Chapter 4: The Line of Betrayal. The maintenance shaft was a claustrophobic vein of steel, its walls vibrating with the distant hum of the apex spire's machinery. Kale's boots echoed on the grated floor, each step a reminder of how far he'd strayed from the safety of his workshop. The microdrive in Myra's pocket felt like a bomb, its data on Eclipse a ticking fuse. His neural chip pulsed, not with whispers now, but with a low, insistent buzz that burrowed into his skull like a parasite. Mira led the way, her silhouette sharp against the shaft's dim emergency lights. She hadn't spoken since they'd escaped the gala, her focus absolute, but Kale could sense the weight on her. The way her shoulders tensed, the way her hand hovered near her pulse gun. It wasn't just the drones or specters she was worried about. It was him. "You're quiet," Kale said, his voice rough in the confined space. "What's the plan when we reach this resistance of yours?" Mira didn't turn. "We hand over the data. They'll know how to use it." Torin trusted them. "Torin's dead," Kale said, sharper than he intended. "And you're dodging. What aren't you telling me?" She stopped abruptly, spinning to face him. Her eyes were hard, but there was something else in them, guilt, maybe, or fear. "You want the truth?" "But I wasn't just a journalist. I was upper echelon, born into it. I walked away because I saw what they were doing, what Zenith was building. But that doesn't mean I'm clean, Kale. Nobody gets out untouched." Kale stared at her, the revelation hitting like a punch. Upper echelon. The people who'd built the chips, the spires, the world that crushed the lower grid. Mira, with her patched jacket and resistance talk, had been one of them. "You were part of this," he said, his voice low. "Part of Zenith." "Not anymore," Mira snapped. "I've spent years fighting them, risking everything to undo what I saw. But if you want to judge me, go ahead. Just don't slow us down." The chip buzzed, and a faint voice flickered in Kale's mind, distrust. "Eliminate." He clenched his fists, pushing it away. "You should have told me. I'm risking my neck for this, and you're holding out." Myra's jaw tightened. "You're not the only one risking something. Now move. We're almost there." Kale followed, his trust in her fraying like a worn cable. The chip's buzz grew louder, and he wondered if it was Zenith's doing or his own paranoia. Either way, Myra's past changed things. She wasn't just a rebel. She was a defector. And defectors had motives he couldn't afford to ignore. The Resistance hideout was buried in the ruins of Old Nova, a district abandoned after Zenith's rise. Crumbling factories and shattered hollow billboards loomed in the dark, relics of a city that had once dreamed of equality. Mira led Kale through a maze of debris to a rusted warehouse, its entrance hidden behind a collapsed wall. She knocked in a precise rhythm, and a panel slid open, revealing a scanner that swept her retina. The door hissed, and a figure emerged, a woman with cropped gray hair and a cybernetic arm that gleamed faintly. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "Mira," she said, then glanced at Kale. "Who's the stray?" "Kale," Mira said. "He's with me." He pulled Torin's data. The woman's gaze lingered on Kale, then she nodded. "I'm Soren. Get inside. You're late." The warehouse interior was a hive of activity. Resistance fighters, maybe 24, moved between makeshift workstations, their screens displaying maps, code, and surveillance feeds. Crates of scavenged tech lined the walls, from pulse rifles to signal jammers. It was a far cry from the lower grid's despair, but the air was heavy with purpose and fear. Soren led them to a central terminal, where a young hacker with augmented eyes was decrypting data. "Show me what you've got," she said, gesturing to the microdrive. Mira handed it over, and the hacker plugged it in. The terminal hummed, projecting a hollow display of Nova's surveillance grid, overlaid with fragments of Eclipse's schematics. Kale recognized the red dots from Varn's gala, millions of chipped citizens, their lives reduced to data points. Torin was right, Soren said, her voice grim. Eclipse isn't just control. It's erasure. Zenith's testing a system to overwrite neural patterns. Turn people into drones, loyal to the upper echelon. No thoughts, no resistance. Just obedience. Kale's chip buzzed, and a wave of nausea hit him. Obey. Serve. He gripped the terminal's edge, steadying himself. They're already doing it, he said. My chip, it's been talking. Telling me to comply. Soren's eyes narrowed. You're compromised. Why didn't you tell us? He's not compromised, Mira said, stepping between them. Torin's virus is in his chip. It's fighting Zenith signals. That's why he's still himself. For now, Soren said. If Zenith escalates the signal, he's a liability. We should remove it. Remove it? Kale's voice rose. You mean cut into my head? No thanks. I'm not your lab rat. It's not about being a rat, Soren said, her cybernetic arm whirring as she gestured. It's about survival. Your chip's a beacon. Zenith can track you, control you. We've seen it before. Kale glanced at Mira, expecting her to back him up, but she looked away, her expression unreadable. You agree with her? He asked, his voice sharp. After dragging me into this? Mira met his eyes, her jaw tight. I don't want you dead, Kale. But Soren's right. The chip's a risk. We can't fight Zenith if you're a walking signal. The chip buzzed again, louder, and Kale swore he heard laughter, cold, mechanical. He stepped back, his hand drifting to the stun rod at his belt. Nobody's touching me. You want the data, you've got it. But I'm not your pawn. Soren raised a hand, signaling calm. Nobody's forcing you. But look around. These people are risking everything to stop Zenith. You're either with us or you're a threat. The resistance fighters had paused, their eyes on Kale. Some held weapons, others looked wary. The hacker at the terminal spoke up, his augmented eyes glowing. The data's incomplete, but it confirms Torin's intel. Eclipse is live in test zones. Lower grid sectors are already affected. People are changing. Changing how? Kale asked, his voice low. Losing themselves, the hacker said. They stop questioning, stop fighting. They work, obeyed it. Zenith's culling the weak, perfecting their system. Kale's mind flashed to the lower grid, families starving, scavengers like him scraping by. If Eclipse spread, there'd be nothing left. No hope, no rebellion. Just a city of ghosts. He turned to Mira, his anger softening but not gone. You knew this. Back at the gala. Why didn't you tell me everything? Myra's shoulders slumped just slightly. Because I wasn't sure you'd stay. You're not like us, Kale. You're a survivor, not a fighter. I needed you to see it for yourself. The chip buzzed and Kale winced, the laughter louder now. Betray. Destroy. He shook his head, focusing on Myra's words. She was right. He'd never wanted this fight. But Torin's death, the data, the whispers, they pulled him in. And now he couldn't walk away. Fine, he said, his voice steady. I'm in. But no knives in my head. We use the virus, finish what Torin started. Deal? Soren nodded, though her eyes were skeptical. Deal. But we're watching you. Mira stepped closer, her voice low. I'm sorry, Kale. I should have been straight with you. Save it, Kale said, brushing past her. Just don't lie to me again. The Resistance spent hours analyzing the microdrive's data, piecing together Eclipse's scope. Kale sat apart, tinkering with a salvage drone to keep his hands busy. The chip's buzz had settled into a dull ache, but the voices lingered, fragmented and menacing. He tried to focus on the drone's circuits, but Myra's revelation gnawed at him. Upper echelon. She'd walked in their world, worn their clothes, shared their power. What else was she hiding? Soren approached, her cybernetic arm clicking softly. "You don't trust her," she said, not a question. Kale didn't look up. "Should I?" "She's risked more than most," Soren said. "But she's got ghosts. We all do. Just keep your eyes open." Kale nodded, his fingers tightening on the drone. Ghosts. He had plenty of his own, years scavenging, dodging enforcers, watching friends vanish to Zenith's camps. But Myra's ghosts were different. They wore gilded suits and smiled while the grid burned. The hacker called them over, his terminal displaying a new fragment of Torin's virus. "It's a disruptor," he said, excitement in his voice. "Designed to overload Zenith's neural signals. If we can complete it, we could free the chipped. Maybe even shut down Eclipse." "How do we complete it?" Mira asked, leaning over the terminal. "We need the rest of Torin's code," the hacker said. "He hid it in Zenith's abandoned research labs, old Nova sector. But it's a death trap, crawling with drones and fail-safes." Kale stood, the drone forgotten. "Then we go. Tonight. Before Zenith tracks us here." Soren raised an eyebrow. "You're eager for someone who didn't want to fight." "I'm not fighting for you," Kale said. "I'm fighting for me. For everyone they're turning into puppets." Mira met his gaze, and for a moment, something like respect flickered in her eyes. "Then let's move." The old Nova labs were a graveyard of steel and glass, their corridors choked with dust and broken tech. Kale and Mira moved silently, guided by the hacker's map, their pulse guns drawn. The resistance had stayed behind, preparing for a potential Zenith assault. It was just the two of them now, and the tension between them was a third presence, heavy and unspoken. The chip buzzed, and Kale stumbled, catching himself on a wall. "Surrender." He gritted his teeth, pushing forward. Mira glanced back, concern flickering across her face, but she didn't speak. He didn't want her pity. They reached the lab's core, a cavernous chamber filled with ancient servers and shattered hollow displays. A terminal glowed faintly, its screen displaying a Zenith logo. Mira plugged in the microdrive, and the terminal hummed, pulling up Torin's hidden files. "There," she said, her voice tight with hope. "The rest of the virus." But before she could download it, the chip in Kale's head erupted. Pain seared through him, and the voices screamed, "Kill." He dropped to his knees, clutching his skull, as Mira spun toward him. "Kale," she shouted, reaching for him. The terminal sparked, and the room's lights flared red. Drones emerged from the shadows, their lenses locking onto them. Zenith had been waiting. Chapter 5: The Hunt. The lab's red lights pulsed like a heartbeat, casting jagged shadows across the shattered servers. Kale writhed on the floor, his skull a furnace of pain as the neural chip screamed commands: "Kill. Obey. Destroy." The voices were no longer whispers but a chorus, drowning out his thoughts. Through the haze, he saw Mira crouched beside him, her pulse gun raised, her eyes darting between him and the drones emerging from the darkness. "Kale, fight it!" Mira shouted, her voice sharp but distant, like a signal cutting through static. The drones, sleek, insect-like machines with glowing lenses, closed in, their rotors a deafening buzz. Their tasers crackled, primed to incapacitate. Kale's vision blurred, the chip's commands urging him to lunge at Mira, to end her. He clenched his fists, nails biting into his palms, anchoring himself to the pain. "Get the data," he gasped, forcing the words out. Mira hesitated, her hand hovering over the terminal where the microdrive was still plugged in, downloading Torin's virus. The drones were seconds away. She cursed, then fired a pulse blast, hitting one drone square in its core. It sparked and crashed, but the others adjusted, their movements eerily synchronized. Zenith wasn't just controlling them, they were learning. Kale staggered to his feet, the chip's screams relentless. "Betray! Eliminate!" He grabbed his stun rod, its weight grounding him, and swung at the nearest drone. The rod connected, sending a surge of electricity through the machine. It shuddered and fell, but the effort cost him. His vision swam, and the voices grew louder, taunting, "You can't win. Submit." Mira yanked the microdrive free as the terminal beeped, the download complete. "Got it," she yelled, ducking as a drone's taser grazed her shoulder, singeing her jacket. "We need to move." Kale nodded, though every step felt like wading through tar. The chip's commands were a physical force now, tugging at his limbs, urging him to turn on Mira. He focused on her voice, her movement, anything to keep himself tethered. They sprinted for the lab's exit, a rusted hatch at the far end of the chamber. The drones pursued, their tasers firing in rapid bursts. Mira reached the hatch first, slamming her fist against the control panel. It sparked, damaged from years of neglect, and refused to open. "Shit," she muttered, pulling a multi-tool from her belt and prying the panel open. Wires spilled out, a tangled mess. Kale stood guard, his stun rod humming as the drones closed in. His chip pulsed, and a new command surfaced. "Surrender. Return." His arm twitched, the rod nearly slipping from his grip. He gritted his teeth, swinging at another drone. The impact sent it spiraling, but the effort left him dizzy, the voices laughing in his head. "Hurry," he growled, his voice hoarse. "Working on it." Mira snapped, her fingers deftly splicing wires. Sparks flew, and the hatch groaned, inching open. The drones were nearly on them, their tasers charging for a final strike. Kale's chip erupted, pain blinding him. "Kill her." He dropped to one knee, the stun rod clattering to the floor. Mira glanced back, her eyes widening. "Kale, hold on." The hatch slid open, just wide enough to slip through. Mira grabbed Kale's arm, hauling him to his feet. They stumbled through the gap as the drones fired, tasers sizzling against the hatch's edge. Mira slammed the panel on the other side, shorting the circuit. The hatch sealed with a clang, trapping the drones inside. They collapsed in the corridor beyond, a narrow tunnel choked with dust and cobwebs. Kale's chest heaved, the chip's voices fading to a dull roar. Mira leaned against the wall, catching her breath, the microdrive clutched in her hand. "You okay?" she asked, her voice softer now. Kale shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's getting worse. The chip, it's not just talking. It's trying to control me." Myra's face tightened, guilt flickering in her eyes. "I should have warned you." Torin said the virus could destabilize active chips. "It's fighting Zenith signals, but it's tearing you apart in the process." "Great," Kale muttered, forcing himself to stand. "So I'm a walking bomb. What's on the drive? Tell me it was worth it." Mira held up the microdrive, its casing scratched but intact. The rest of Torin's virus, plus something else. Logs from Zenith's old experiments. They called it the Eclipse Protocol. "It's not just about control, Kale. It's about culling." "Culling?" Kale's stomach twisted. He'd heard the word at the gala, but it hadn't sunk in until now. Mira nodded, her voice grim. "They're targeting the lower grid. The chips can induce termination. Heart failure, neural overload, you name it. Zenith's been testing it for years, wiping out anyone they deem unproductive." Torin was one of thousands. Kale's mind reeled. Thousands. The junkyard body, the labor camps, the disappearances in the grid. It wasn't random. It was systematic. "They're killing us," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "And nobody knows." "Not nobody," Mira said. Torin knew. The resistance knows. And now we do. This drive, it's proof. And the virus can stop it. Kale touched his temple. The chips buzz a constant reminder of his own vulnerability. If we live long enough to use it. Mira managed a faint smile. "That's the spirit. Come on. We need to get back to the resistance." The old Nova sector was a labyrinth of ruins, its streets choked with rubble and the husks of forgotten machines. Kale and Mira moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows as they headed for the resistance hideout. The chips' voices had quieted, but Kale could feel them lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness. Every step was a battle to stay himself. Mira glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "You're holding up better than I expected." "Don't sound so surprised," Kale said, his tone dry. "I'm stubborn." She snorted, but there was warmth in it. "But we'll need that." They rounded a corner and Kale froze. The air shimmered, just like it had before the Spectre attack. "Mira," he hissed, grabbing her arm. She followed his gaze, her pulse gun already drawn. The shimmer solidified into 3 figures. Spectres, their black exosuits blending with the dark. Their visors glowed, locking onto Kale and Mira with mechanical precision. "Run!" Mira shouted, firing a pulse blast. The shot hit one spectre, sparking, but it barely flinched. The others moved, their speed unnatural, closing the distance in seconds. Kale's chip screamed, "Submit," served, and his legs faltered, the command nearly rooting him in place. He shook it off, sprinting after Mira into a narrow alley. The specters pursued, their movements silent, eerie. Kale's stun rod felt useless against them, but he gripped it anyway, his heart pounding. Mira led them through a collapsed building, its interior a maze of broken beams and shattered glass. She ducked behind a pillar, pulling Kale with her. "We can't outrun them," she whispered. "We need to outsmart them." "Got a plan?" Kale asked, his voice tight. The chips' voices were back, urging him to surrender. "Expose. Betray." Mira scanned the room, then pointed to a rusted generator in the corner, its cables exposed. "That's our shot. Overload it. The EMP might disable their suits." Kale nodded, already moving. He reached the generator, prying open its panel with his multi-tool. The spectre's footsteps echoed closer, their visors glinting through the rubble. Kale's chip pulsed, pain spiking, but he focused on the wires, splicing them with shaking hands. "Cover me," he called. Mira fired at the specters, her pulse gun buying seconds. One specter lunged and she rolled away, the assassin's blade slicing the air where she'd stood. Kale twisted the wires, sparking the generator. It hummed, then roared, energy building. "Now," he shouted, diving for cover. The generator erupted, a pulse of electromagnetic energy ripping through the room. The specters froze, their suits glitching, visors flickering. One collapsed, its systems fried. The others staggered, disoriented. Mira grabbed Kale, pulling him toward an exit. "Go!" They stumbled into the street, the hideout just blocks away. But Kale's chip flared, a new command overriding the pain. "Report. Return." His vision darkened, and he saw himself turning on Mira, his stun rod raised. He froze, fighting the impulse with everything he had. "Kale?" Mira's voice was sharp, urgent. She grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Stay with me." He blinked, the vision fading. "I'm here," he gasped, but the chip's buzz was relentless. He could feel it rewriting him, piece by piece. They reached the hideout, Soren's team pulling them inside. The warehouse was chaos, resistance fighters arming themselves, screens flashing with alerts. Zenith was closing in. Soren met them, her cybernetic arm whirring. "You got the virus?" Mira held up the microdrive. More Eclipse logs. "They're killing thousands, Soren. It's genocide." Soren's face hardened. "Then we move fast. The virus needs to be deployed before Zenith locks down the grid." Kale leaned against a crate, his head pounding. The chip's voices were a cacophony now, blending with memories, his workshop, the junkyard, Torin's body. "You're nothing. Submit." He looked at Mira, at the resistance, at the microdrive. They were fighting for a future he might not see. "I can't keep this up," he said, his voice low. "The chip, it's winning." Mira knelt beside him, her hand on his arm. "We'll find a way. The virus can disable it. We just need time." Kale shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. "Time's one thing we don't have." Soren approached, her expression grim. "He's right. Zenith's mobilizing. They know we have the virus. We hit their core systems now, or we lose everything." Kale stood, the chip's voices roaring but his resolve stronger. "Then we hit them. I'm not letting Torin's death be for nothing." Mira met his eyes, a mix of fear and determination in her gaze. "You sure?" "No," Kale said, gripping his stun rod. "But I'm done running." The resistance rallied, their plan forming, a desperate assault on Zenith's network hub. Kale felt the chip's pull, its commands clawing at his mind. But he also felt the weight of the microdrive, the proof of Zenith's crimes, and the spark of something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. As they prepared to move, Kale caught Myra's eye. "No more secrets," he said, his voice steady. She nodded, a flicker of regret in her expression. "No more secrets." The chip screamed, but Kale ignored it, stepping into the night with the resistance. Zenith was hunting them, but they were hunting back. And this time, they had the truth. Chapter 6: The Truth Beneath the Shadows. The resistance hideout buzzed with urgency, a storm of motion and purpose. Fighters checked pulse rifles, hackers uploaded Torin's virus into portable drives, and Soren barked orders, her cybernetic arm glinting under the warehouse's harsh lights. Kale stood at the edge of the chaos, his stun rod heavy in his hand, the neural chip in his temple a relentless pulse of pain and commands. "Submit. Destroy. Serve." The voices were a tide now, threatening to pull him under, but he clung to the microdrive's weight in his pocket, the proof of Zenith's genocide, the spark of Torin's rebellion. Mira was at the central terminal, her fingers flying over the keys as she integrated the virus's final components. Her face was taut, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion and something deeper, guilt, Kale suspected, though she hadn't spoken of it since her upper echelon confession. He wanted to trust her, needed to, but the chip's whispers fed his doubts. "Betrayer. Liar." Soren approached, her expression grim. "We've got a window. Zenith's network hub is vulnerable during their next data cycle, 2 hours from now. We hit their core servers, upload the virus, and cripple Eclipse before it spreads. But it's a one-shot deal. If we fail, they'll lock us out for good." Kale nodded, his jaw tight. "And if my chip goes haywire mid-mission?" Soren's eyes flicked to his temple, where the chip's faint glow was visible beneath his skin. "You stay focused or we pull you. No offense, Kale, but you're a risk." "None taken," Kale said, his voice dry. "Just don't expect me to sit this out." Mira glanced up from the terminal, catching his eye. "You don't have to do this. The virus is ready. We can handle the upload." Kale shook his head, the chip's buzz sharpening. "Abandon. Flee. I'm not letting Zenith win. Not after Torin. Not after everything." Mira held his gaze, then nodded, a flicker of respect in her expression. "Then we do this together." The hacker from earlier, Rin, with his glowing augmented eyes, joined them, holding a modified datapad. "Virus is loaded. It'll disrupt Eclipse's neural signals, free the chipped, and expose Zenith's kill logs to the public. But we need physical access to the hub's core. Security's tight, drones, specters, the works." Soren gestured to a holomap of Zenith's network hub, a fortified complex in the upper echelon's heart. "We go in small. Kill Mira, Rin, and me. The rest hold the perimeter, keep Zenith's forces busy." "Questions?" Kale raised a hand. "Yeah. What's stopping them from frying my chip the second we're inside?" Rin tapped his datapad. "I've rigged a signal dampener. It'll mute Zenith's commands, but it's not perfect. You'll still feel the chip. Just don't lose it." "Comforting," Kale muttered, but he took the dampener, clipping it to his belt. The device hummed softly, and the chip's voices dulled, though they didn't vanish. "What? Soren clapped her hands, silencing the room. "Move out. For Torin. For the grid." The resistance roared, a defiant cry that echoed in Kale's chest. He gripped his stun rod, meeting Myra's eyes. "No more secrets," he'd said. He hoped she meant it. The network hub was a fortress of glass and steel, its spire dwarfed only by the apex itself. Hollow barriers shimmered around its perimeter, patrolled by drones and enforcers in exosuits. The resistance struck first, their perimeter team launching EMP grenades that sparked chaos, disabling drones and drawing Zenith's forces away. Kale, Mira, Soren, and Rin slipped through the gap, their dampeners cloaking them from surveillance. Inside, the hub was a sterile labyrinth of white walls and glowing consoles. Kale's chip buzzed despite the dampener, its commands fragmented but insistent. "Report. Obey." He gritted his teeth, following Soren's lead through the corridors. Mira stayed close, her pulse gun drawn, while Rin hacked access panels to bypass security locks. They reached the core chamber, a vast dome lined with servers that hummed like a living thing. The central terminal glowed, its hollow display showing Eclipse's status, active. Lower grid sectors 7 to 12 under protocol. Red dots pulsed across the map. Millions of lives, reduced to data, their free will eroding. "Rin, get to work," Soren ordered, taking position by the door. "We've got minutes before they pinpoint us." Rin plugged his datapad into the terminal, uploading the virus. "It'll take 60 seconds to propagate. Keep them off me." Kale scanned the chamber, his stun rod ready. The chip's buzz grew sharper, and a vision flashed, himself turning on Rin, smashing the terminal. He shook it off, sweat beading on his brow. "Hurry," he growled. Mira touched his arm, her voice low. "You're stronger than it. Focus." Before Kale could respond, the chamber's doors hissed open. Spectres materialized, their exosuits glitching into view, visors locked on the group. Soren fired her pulse rifle, hitting one, but the others moved like shadows, blades gleaming. Kale swung his stun rod, catching a specter's arm. The assassin staggered, its suit sparking, but another lunged at Mira. She dodged, firing a pulse blast that sent it reeling. Soren fought with mechanical precision, her cybernetic arm blocking a blade, but the specters were relentless, their AI-driven movements adapting to every attack. 30 seconds, Rin shouted, his eyes glowing as he monitored the upload. Kale's chip erupted, pain blinding him. "Kill them all." He dropped to one knee, the stun rod slipping from his grip. The vision returned, Myra's blood on his hands, the terminal in flames. He screamed, slamming his fist against the floor, fighting the chip's pull. Mira knelt beside him, dodging a specter's blade. "Kale, stay with me." The dampener beeped, its signal weakening. The chip's voices roared, "End her. End everything." Kale's hand twitched toward his stun rod, but he grabbed Myra's arm instead, grounding himself in her warmth. "I'm here," he gasped. "Upload complete." Rin yelled, yanking the datapad free. The terminal flared, Eclipse's map glitching as the virus spread, red dots flickering to green, freed minds, exposed truths. But the victory was short-lived. The chamber shook, alarms blaring. Enforcers poured in, their exosuits heavier, weapons primed. Soren took a hit, her cybernetic arm sparking as she fell. Mira dragged Kale to cover behind a server, firing at the enforcers. "We need to go," Mira shouted, helping Soren up. Rin sprinted for the exit, but a specter caught him, its blade slicing through his chest. He collapsed, his augmented eyes dimming, the datapad clattering to the floor. Kale's heart sank. Rin was gone, but the virus was live. They had to survive to ensure it worked. Soren limped forward, her rifle blazing. "Get to the extraction point. I'll hold them." "No!" Mira protested, but Soren shoved her toward the exit. "Go!" Soren roared, firing at the enforcers. "Make it count." Kale and Mira ran, the chamber erupting in gunfire and sparks. Soren's silhouette faded behind them, her sacrifice buying seconds. Kale's chip screamed, "Abandon! Die!" But he pushed through, Myra's hand in his, their footsteps echoing in the corridors. They reached the extraction point, a service hatch where a resistance drone waited. They climbed aboard, the drone lifting into Nova's smog-choked sky. Below, the hub burned, Zenith's forces scrambling to contain the virus's spread. Kale's chip buzzed, weaker now, as if the virus was fighting back. Mira leaned against the drone's wall, her face streaked with sweat and blood. "We did it," she said, her voice hollow. "The virus is live. Eclipse is crumbling." Kale nodded, but the weight of Rin's death, Soren's sacrifice, pressed on him. At what cost? Myra's eyes met his, and for the first time, she looked broken. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice barely audible over the drone's hum. "About Eclipse. About me." Kale's chest tightened, the chip's buzz flaring. "Liar. Punish." He ignored it, focusing on her. "What?" Mira swallowed, her hands trembling. "I didn't just walk away from the upper echelon. I helped build Eclipse. Not the killing, but the framework. The neural algorithms. I thought it was for progress, for order. By the time I realized what Varn was doing, it was too late. Torin, he wasn't just my source. He was my friend. I got him killed." Kale stared at her, the revelation a blade in his gut. Mira, the rebel, the defector, had helped create the monster they were fighting. The chip laughed, "Justice. Destroy." But Kale pushed it down, his anger warring with the bond they'd built. "You could have told me," he said, his voice low. "After everything, you still held back." "I was ashamed," Mira whispered, tears in her eyes. "I'm still fighting to fix it, Kale. That's why I'm here." He wanted to scream, to walk away, but the drone's hum, the city below, the virus's faint hope, they tethered him. Mira was flawed, broken, but so was he. And they were all that was left. "We finished this," Kale said, his voice steady despite the chip's roar. "For Torin. For Rin. For everyone." Mira nodded, wiping her eyes. "Together." The drone soared toward the Resistance's backup hideout, Nova's spires glinting in the distance. The virus was spreading, freeing minds, exposing Zenith's crimes. But Kale knew the fight wasn't over. His chip buzzed, weaker but alive, a reminder of the battle within. And somewhere, Elias Varn was watching, his plans unraveling but not broken. Kale gripped his stun rod, the city's lights blurring below. The truth was out, But the shadows were deep, and the cost of rebellion was only beginning. Chapter 7: The Day of Judgment. The resistance drone skimmed Nova skyline, its engines a low growl against the city's neon hum. Kale sat in the cramped hold, his stun rod across his lap, the neural chip in his temple pulsing with a dull, persistent ache. The virus had spread, its tendrils disrupting Eclipse's control, freeing thousands of chipped minds in the lower grid. Holoscreens across the city flickered with Zenith's exposed kill logs, sparking riots in the streets. But Kale knew it wasn't enough. Elias Varn was still out there, and as long as Zenith stood, Eclipse could rise again. Mira sat across from him, her pulse gun holstered, her face etched with exhaustion and resolve. Her confession about building Eclipse's framework hung between them, a wound still raw. Kale wanted to hate her for it, but the chip's voices, punish, destroy, were drowned by the memory of her fighting beside him, risking everything to undo her past. They were bound now, not by trust, but by necessity. The drone's comm crackled, and Soren's voice came through, strained but alive. She'd survived the hub assault, her cybernetic arm damaged but functional. "We've rallied what's left of the resistance," she said. "The grid's uprising is spreading, but Zenith's locking down their headquarters. Varn's there, reinforcing Eclipse's core. If we don't stop him now, he'll reboot the system." Kale's grip tightened on his stun rod. "Then we hit him. Hard." Mira met his eyes, her voice steady. "It's a fortress, Kale. Drones, specters, enforcers, Varn's ready for us. And your chip, it's still a risk." The chip buzzed, a faint command flickering. "Return. Obey." Kale ignored it, focusing on the dampener clipped to his belt. Rin's device had held so far, but its power was fading. "I'm not sitting this out," he said. "Varn dies or I do." Soren's voice cut in. "We've got a plan." The virus opened a backdoor in Zenith's security. Small team gets in, uploads a kill switch to shut down Eclipse for good. The rest of us hit the perimeter, keep their forces busy. "Kale, Mira, you're on the upload. I'll lead the diversion." Kale nodded, though the weight of it settled like stone in his chest. Torin, Rin, countless others, they died for this. He wouldn't let it be for nothing. The drone banked toward Zenith's headquarters, a monolithic spire of black glass and steel, its summit piercing the smog. Hollow barriers glowed around its base, patrolled by drones and enforcers in heavy exosuits. The Resistance's attack began as they approached, EMP blasts and pulse rifles lighting up the night, drawing Zenith's forces outward. The drones slipped through the chaos, landing on a maintenance platform high on the spire's flank. Kale and Mira disembarked, their dampeners humming to cloak them from surveillance. The platform was exposed, wind whipping at their clothes, but the virus's backdoor had disabled the nearest drones. They pried open an access hatch, dropping into a service corridor lit by flickering emergency lights. The corridor was a maze of steel and cables, its silence unnerving after the city's roar. Kale's chip pulsed, the dampener struggling to mute its commands. "Surf." He gritted his teeth, following Myra's lead. She moved with purpose, her pulse gun drawn, but Kale could see the tension in her shoulders, the ghosts of her past trailing her. They reached the spire's core, a cavernous chamber dominated by a glowing server array, Eclipse's heart. Hollow displays pulsed with data, red dots fading to green as the virus continued its work, but a central cluster remained active, protected by Zenith's countermeasures. A single terminal stood at the chamber center, its screen displaying a chilling message: Eclipse Protocol, partial activation. Population compliance at 47%. 47%, Mira whispered, her voice hollow. Millions already losing themselves. Kale's chip screamed, "Join them. Submit," and he stumbled, catching himself on a server. "We end this," he growled, forcing the words out. Now. Mira plugged the microdrive into the terminal, her fingers trembling as she initiated the kill switch upload. 60 seconds, she said, glancing at the chamber's entrances. We need to hold them off. As if on cue, the doors hissed open. Spectres materialized, their exosuits shimmering, visors glowing with cold precision. Behind them, enforcers in heavy armor advanced, their pulse cannons primed. And at the rear, a figure in a black suit stepped forward, Elias Varn. Varn's presence was a void, his calm demeanor chilling against the chaos. His eyes locked onto Kale, a faint smile curling his lips. You've caused quite a mess, he said, his voice smooth, almost admiring. But it ends here. Kale's chip erupted, pain blinding him. Obey him. Serve. He dropped to one knee, the dampener beeping frantically. Mira fired at the specters, her pulse gun sparking, but they dodged with inhuman speed, closing in. You're fighting a losing battle, Varn continued, stepping closer. Eclipse is inevitable. Humanity is chaos, flawed, weak. I'm giving you order. Purpose. Purpose. Kale spat, forcing himself to stand. You're killing millions. Erasing them. Varn tilted his head, unperturbed. Not erasing. Perfecting. The lower grid is a disease. Eclipse cures it. And you, Kale, you could have been part of it. But you chose to be a pest. Mira shouted, 30 seconds, as she ducked a Spectre's blade, firing at an enforcer. The chamber was a storm of gunfire and sparks, the terminal's upload bar crawling toward completion. Kale's chip roared, kill her. End it, and a vision flashed, his stun rod crushing Myra's skull, the terminal in flames. He screamed, slamming his fist against his temple, fighting the compulsion. The dampener sparked, its power failing. He could feel the chip rewriting him, piece by piece. Varn watched, his smile widening. Your chip's mine, Kale. You can't fight it forever. Join us or die. Kale's eyes met Myra's, her face streaked with sweat and determination. She was fighting for him, for Torin, for the grid. He thought of the junkyard, the body that started it all, the truth he'd sworn to uncover. The chip's voices were deafening, but his own voice, his will, was louder. I'm not yours, Kale growled, ripping the dampener from his belt. He smashed it against the terminal, shorting its circuits. The chip screamed, pain searing through him, but the voices fractured, weakened by the virus's spread. He lunged at Varn, stun rod blazing. Varn sidestepped, faster than Kale expected, and a specter intercepted, its blade slicing Kale's arm. Blood soaked his sleeve, but he swung again, catching the specter's visor. It staggered, glitching. Mira fought her way to the terminal, guarding the upload. 10 seconds, she yelled, firing at an enforcer. The chamber shook, the resistance's perimeter assault breaching the spire's lower levels. Varn drew a sleek pulse pistol, aiming at Kale. Enough, he said, his calm fracturing. You're nothing. Kale dove behind a server as Varn fired, the blast scorching the metal. His chip pulsed, weaker now, but still fighting. He ignored it, focusing on the terminal's hum, the upload's final moments. He had to buy Mira time. He sprinted from cover, tackling Varn. The CO was lean but strong, his movements precise. They grappled, Kale's stun rod sparking against Varn's pistol. The chip's pain was unbearable, but Kale channeled it, slamming Varn against a server. The pistol clattered to the floor. Upload complete. Mira shouted. The terminal flared, the hollow displays glitching as Eclipse's core shut down. Green dots flooded the map, freed minds, Zenith's control crumbling. Varn laughed, a cold, hollow sound, even as Kale pinned him. You think this stops us? Eclipse is bigger than one server. It's in the chips, in the people. You've only delayed the inevitable. Kale's chip buzzed, its final command a whisper. Finish him. For once, he agreed. He raised the stun rod, but pain surged, his vision darkening. The chip was overloading, Zenith's failsafe kicking in. His heart stuttered, his limbs weakening. Mira grabbed him, pulling him back. Kale, no. The virus, it's killing you. Kale's breath was ragged, but he pushed her toward the exit. Go. Get the truth out. Don't let this be for nothing. Tears streaked Myra's face, but she nodded, clutching the microdrive. She fired at the remaining specters, clearing a path. The enforcers closed in, Varn rising, his smile triumphant. Kale stumbled to the terminal, his vision fading. The chip's overload was tearing him apart, but the virus was live, the kill switch active. He accessed the terminal's broadcast system, routing the kill logs to every holoscreen in Nova. The city would see Zenith's crimes, genocide, control, erasure. His heart faltered, the chip's final pulses scream. You lose. But Kale smiled, blood on his lips. No, he whispered. You do. He collapsed, the terminal's light bathing him as the broadcast went live. Myra's voice echoed, distant, calling his name. The chamber faded, Varn's silhouette blurring, the spire trembling as the resistance breached its walls. Nova burned. Holoscreens across the city played Zenith's kill logs, the truth igniting the lower grid. Riots surged, the upper echelon spires besieged. Mira stood at the Resistance's new hideout, the microdrive safe, Kale's sacrifice etched in her heart. Varn had escaped, Zenith's forces retreating, but Eclipse was broken, for now. The freed chipped roamed the grid, their minds their own, but the scars of control lingered. Mira vowed to fight on, to honor Kale, Torin, Rin, Soren. The resistance grew, a spark in the dark. The city's future was uncertain, its spires cracked but standing. Zenith's shadow loomed, Varn's plans paused but not ended. Yet in the streets, voices rose, angry, alive, free. Kale's broadcast had given them that, a chance to rebuild, to resist. Mira looked to the horizon, the dawn gray with smog but unbroken. For you, she whispered and stepped into the fight. Epilogue Ashes of Nova. 3 months had passed since the spire fell, since Kale's blood stained the terminal and his broadcast shattered Zenith's veil. Nova was no longer the city Mira knew. The lower grid pulsed with defiance, its streets alive with voices that had been silenced for decades. Holoscreens, once Zenith's propaganda tools, now displayed the Resistance's messages, Kale's kill logs, Torin's warnings, the truth of Eclipse. The upper echelon spires still loomed, but their glow was dimmer, cracked by riots and sabotage. Yet the war was far from won. Mira stood on the roof of the Resistance's new headquarters, a repurposed factory in old Nova's heart. The air was thick with smog, but she could see the city's pulse, fires in the distance, drones clashing with Resistance fighters, the faint hum of a revolution that refused to die. Her pulse gun hung at her hip, its grip worn from use, and the microdrive, now a relic of Kale's sacrifice, rested in her pocket, a reminder of the cost. The Resistance had grown, swelled by the freed chipped and defectors from the upper echelon, but it was fractured. Soren, her cybernetic arm repaired, led tactical strikes, her pragmatism at anchor in the chaos. New faces, hackers, scavengers, even former enforcers, filled the ranks, but mistrust lingered. Myra's past as an upper echelon engineer, her role in Eclipse's creation, was an open wound. Some called her a hero, others whispered traitor. She didn't care. Kale had seen her truth, and that was enough. The door behind her creaked, and Soren stepped onto the roof, her boots heavy on the concrete. "You're brooding again," she said, her voice gruff but not unkind. "We got a briefing in 10. New intel on Zenith." Mira didn't turn, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Let me guess. Varn's back." Soren snorted, leaning against the rusted railing. "Not confirmed, but likely. Their network's gone dark, but we're picking up encrypted signals from the Apex Spire. They're rebuilding something. Could be Eclipse, could be worse." Myra's jaw tightened. Varn's escape had haunted her since the hub assault. His words, "Eclipse is bigger than one server," echoed in her nightmares. Kale had died to stop him, but Varn was a virus, always adapting, always surviving. "What's the intel say?" "Fragmented," Soren admitted. "But there's chatter about a new protocol. Dawn, they're calling it. Sounds like a reset, new chips, tighter control. And they're targeting the freed. Retaliation for the uprising." Myra's hand drifted to the microdrive, its weight a tether to Kale's memory. The freed, millions whose chips had been deactivated by Torin's virus, were the Resistance's heart. If Zenith could reclaim them, the rebellion would collapse. "We need to hit them first," she said. "Find their lab, shut it down." Soren's cybernetic arm whirred, a faint spark flickering. "Agreed, but we're spread thin. The grid's volatile, factions are forming. Some want peace, others want blood. And we're low on tech. Zenith still got the upper hand." Mira finally turned, her eyes hard. "Then we steal it, like Kale would've." Soren's lips twitched, almost a smile. "You're starting to sound like him. Come on. Briefing's waiting." The briefing room was a cramped space filled with mismatched chairs and scavenge terminals. Resistance leaders crowded around a hollow table, its display showing Nova's fractured map, green zones of rebel control, red zones still under Zenith's grip. Mira stood at the head, her presence commanding despite the whispers about her past. A hacker named Lila, her fingers tipped with neural implants, pulled up the intel. "We intercepted a Zenith transport manifest," she said, her voice quick. "High-security convoy, moving tech from the Apex Spire to a hidden lab in the old Nova wastes. Heavy encryption, but it mentions Dawn and neural recalibration." Myra's stomach twisted. Recalibration, a polite word for enslavement. "When's the convoy moving?" she asked. "Tonight," Lila said. "Midnight. Heavily guarded, drones, enforcers, maybe specters." Soren crossed her arms. "We hit it. Steal the tech, get a lead on Dawn. But it's high risk. If Varn's involved, he'll be ready." Mira nodded, her mind racing. Kale would have charged in, stun rod swinging, trusting his instincts. She wasn't him, but she'd learned from him. "Small team," she said. "Me, Soren, Lila. We ambush the convoy, grab the cargo, and vanish. The rest of you keep the grid's defenses tight." A grizzled fighter, his face scarred from enforcer rounds, spoke up. "Why you, Mira? You're a liability. Upper echelon blood doesn't wash off." The room tensed, eyes on Mira. She didn't flinch. "I built Eclipse. I know Zenith's systems better than anyone. You want to stop Dawn, you need me. And I'm done running from my past." Soren stepped forward, her cybernetic arm gleaming. "She's earned her place. Anyone got a problem, take it up with me." The fighter backed down, but the doubt lingered. Mira ignored it, focusing on the holomap. Kale's voice echoed in her mind, "No more secrets." She'd fight for the grid, for the freed, until her last breath. The old Nova wastes were a graveyard of rusted machines and forgotten dreams, the air thick with dust and the tang of burnt circuits. Mira crouched behind a collapsed billboard, her pulse gun drawn, Soren and Lila at her side. The convoy's lights cut through the dark, 3 armored transports, flanked by drones and enforcers on hoverbikes. No specters yet, but Myra's instincts screamed caution. Soren signaled, and resistance snipers opened fire from the ruins, pulse rifles sparking. Drones exploded, and enforcers scrambled, their exosuits absorbing the blasts. Mira sprinted forward, Lila hacking the convoy's lead transport with a neural spike. The vehicle's doors hissed open, revealing crates of gleaming tech, chips, servers, hollow drives. "Grab what you can," Mira shouted, firing at an enforcer. The man fell, his suit sparking, but more closed in, their cannons roaring. Soren's cybernetic arm punched through a drone, tearing it apart, while Lila uploaded a virus to jam the convoy's comms. Mira reached the crates, prying one open. Inside were neural chips, smaller and sleeker than the ones in the grid, their circuits pulsing with a strange, violet light. She thought, her blood cold. The air shimmered, and a specter appeared, its blade slicing toward Lila. Mira fired, the pulse blast hitting its visor, but it kept coming relentless. Soren tackled it, her arms sparking as the blade grazed her. "Go!" she yelled. "I've got this." Mira hesitated, then grabbed a crate, dragging it toward the Resistance's extraction drone. Lila followed, her neural implants glowing as she hacked the remaining transports, locking their systems. The enforcers rallied, their numbers overwhelming, but the Resistance's snipers held them back, buying time. As Mira loaded the crate, a voice cut through the chaos. Smooth, cold, familiar. "You're persistent, Mira. I'll give you that." She spun, pulse gun raised. Elias Varn stood atop a transport, his black suit pristine despite the battle. His eyes gleamed with amusement, a pulse pistol in his hand. No enforcers flanked him, he didn't need them. "You're done, Varn," Mira said, her voice steady. "Eclipse is dead. The grid's free." Varn laughed, a sound that chilled her. "Free? You've given them chaos, nothing more. Dawn will restore order. Those chips," he nodded to the crate, "are just the beginning. A new network, unbreakable. And you, Mira, will watch it rise." Mira fired, but Varn moved, his speed unnatural, enhanced by tech she didn't recognize. He closed the distance, disarming her with a flick of his wrist. Her pulse gun clattered to the ground, and his hand gripped her throat, lifting her slightly. "You could have been part of this," Varn said, his voice low. "You built Eclipse. You understood perfection. Why throw it away?" Mira choked, her vision darkening, but she spat in his face. "Because I saw the cost. Kale showed me." Varn's smile faded, and he tightened his grip. But a pulse blast hit his shoulder, sparking, and he staggered, releasing her. Soren stood behind, her rifle smoking, Lila at her side. "Back off, bastard," Soren growled. Mira scrambled for her gun, firing at Varn. He dodged, vanishing into the shimmer of a cloaking device, his laughter echoing. "This isn't over," his voice called, fading into the night. The extraction drone roared to life, and Mira, Soren, and Lila piled in with the crate, the convoy burning behind them. The Resistance's snipers covered their retreat, and the drone lifted, soaring toward the hideout. Myra's throat burned, Varn's words clawing at her. "Dawn will restore order." Back at the headquarters, the crate sat open, its chips analyzed by Lila's team. "They're advanced," Lila said, her augmented eyes scanning the circuits. "Designed to bypass Torin's virus. If Zenith deploys these, the Freed could be rechipped. Total control, no resistance." Mira stood by the hollow table, the map of Nova now a patchwork of hope and bloodshed. "Then we destroy the lab," she said. "Find Varn, end Dawn before it begins." Soren nodded, her arm repaired but scarred. "We'll need more fighters, more tech. The grid's with us, but it's not enough. Varn's playing a long game." Mira touched the microdrive in her pocket, Kale's sacrifice of fire in her chest. "Then we play longer. For him. For all of them. The resistance rallied, their voices rising in the factory's halls. Nova was broken, its future a coin toss between freedom and chains. Varn's shadow loomed, dawn a specter on the horizon. But Mira saw Kale's face in the freed, in the fires, in the fight. He'd given them a chance, and she'd carry it forward, no matter the cost. The city pulsed below, alive, defiant. The ashes of Nova were stirring, and Mira would see them rise. The truth has been revealed. The system has been cracked. But the war for free will has only begun. Thanks for watching Murder in a Tech-Stratified Society. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling episodes. See you in the next mission.